Holiday cookies are a treasured tradition in Catoctin Furnace, and Yam Yams are one of the recipes that has been handed down. We're not quite sure where the name Yam Yam comes from, but once you see the finished cookies, I think you'll begin to understand that it might just be a description, kind of like a cookie looking like a sweet potato. The Yam Yam recipe, as I said, is a very old one, and it's actually now within the 175th anniversary cookbook that Harriet Chappell put together in 2008. That was because it was the 175th anniversary of the consecration of the church in 1833. So Nancy Anderson and Carla Beck gathered recipes from all throughout the village and put them together in this wonderful recipe book. And the Yam Yam recipe that I'll be making today is one of those. It is a Christmas cookie, or at least in my family, we always looked upon it as a Christmas cookie. The ingredients are shortening, sugar, 2 eggs, dark molasses, baking soda, flour, and vanilla. The first thing that one does is cream the shortening with the sugar. I've obviously pre-measured. This is 1 cup of shortening. I'm not quite sure what kind of shortening would have been used in the past. Obviously now we have Crisco, and I really should have looked up how old Crisco is when that was brought into the food repertoire, but we'll have to look that up after the fact and get back to you. So again, this is 1 cup of shortening, and now I'm going to add 1 cup of sugar. Now these 2 ingredients need to be creamed together. So I do that by hand. I just work the spoon through the sugar and the shortening, and it creams nicely. Now this may take a while, not too long, but it smells really good while you're doing it, I can tell you. So I'm sure everyone has favorite Christmas cookies that they make, whether they're sugar cookies, molasses cookies, or just so many other kinds. But these are our go-to holiday treats, and it's made even more special because they are such a historic recipe. So this creamed nicely, as you can see. I'm going to show you. The sugar and the shortening are now creamed, and I'm going to add the eggs. Now, when I was a 4-H member, I learned very quickly that you always open an egg over a dish that is not your dish in case there's something wrong with the egg. So I'm looking, yep, the egg looks good, so we're great. And again, yes, all right. So I've added 2 eggs to the recipe, or to the ingredients, and I'm going to mix those a little bit. Now I'm going to add the molasses. This is dark molasses, and it's 6 tablespoons. Not teaspoon, but tablespoons. So these cookies have a lot of molasses in them. We know from the ledgers at the store in Catoctin Furnace that molasses was one of the items that one could buy there. And it was really a staple for sweetening both dark and light molasses, for sweetening dishes. And it certainly has a pungent aroma that adds a lot of flavor to anything that you put it in. So there's my 5th tablespoon, and finally my 6th tablespoon of molasses. All right. Now I'm going to mix the eggs, the molasses, and the creamed sugar and shortening together. I'm going to show you that it's looking very nice. Very dark, obviously, because of the molasses that's been added. I'm going to mix it well because the next ingredient that goes in is the flour, and that really firms it up and makes it into a dough. Again, here's how it's looking now. Now I could use a mixer to sort of finish it off, and I have done that in the past. And since there are a couple little lumps, not to mention the shortening that's adhering to the spoon, I think I'm going to do that this time. It just smooths it out a little bit more before the flour is placed in. So this is the advantage of having a 21st century electric mixer. I'm going to use the electric mixer to smooth the batter. This was something we didn't have, obviously, in the 18th and 19th century, but we're going to take full advantage of it here in the 21st. Perfect. Now the batter is very creamy. Everything is mixed nicely, as you can see. And we're ready to add the flour and the vanilla, the final two ingredients. We're adding 3 cups of flour, and I add it in 2 batches so that it's not so difficult to blend in. And I'm also going to add the baking soda. It's 2 teaspoons of baking soda. The final ingredient I'll add, once this is mixed nicely, is the vanilla. The flour blends in really nicely because the ingredients, the sugar, the shortening, everything has been nicely creamed, so it blends the flour in. So now I have most of the flour blended in, and I'll add the rest of the flour. Oops. A little more in the bottom. And now I have all the ingredients together. Obviously, as all the flour becomes mixed in, it's less malleable, but it's looking really nice. Now I'm going to add the vanilla, and it's 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And that's the final step. Everything's blended. Now you can probably see that the batter is not as firm as you might think cookie dough is sometimes before you roll it out. That's because these are not cookies that you roll out. These are refrigerator cookies. So they're now going to be put into 2 loaves and chilled in the refrigerator for several hours or even overnight. Now I'm going to warn you, this gets a little messy. It's always very interesting to do this, to make it into the loaves, but it firms up nicely. So you can make the loaf as big or as small as you'd like, depending on what size you want your cookies to be in the end. And so I generally make it a little longer because I like really thin, crispy Yam Yams. I'm going to wrap it, sort of like you'd wrap a Christmas present. it is, ready to go into the refrigerator.
I've taken the Yam Yams out of the refrigerator and they're nicely cooled. You can see that now they are ready to slice and bake. So I'm going to very carefully slice them into very thin pieces and put them on the cookie tin. Now the cookie tin does not need to have any shortening or grease on it. The cookies just are on the dry cookie tin. And notice I'm putting them very far apart because they do spread out pretty dramatically. So I'm going to put the Yam Yams in a 375 oven, and as I said earlier, the directions are 10 to 12 minutes, but I have found that it takes less time. So let's check back in 8 minutes and see how they've done. Perfect Yam Yams. Look at those. I like to loosen the Yam Yams up from the baking sheet and just move them a little bit. That way I'm sure they won't break in the process. So they've cooled for about a minute, and then I move them just ever so slightly. But you can see they're already crispy and almost ready to go into the cookie tin. I've lined the cookie tin with wax paper, and I like to put a layer of wax paper between every layer of Yam Yams so they don't stick together. The Yam Yams have cooled sufficiently so that now we can put them in the cookie tin. And one thing about Yam Yams is they keep a really long time. They are a great cookie to make in advance of any holiday, and put them in a nicely sealed cookie tin, and they will keep for weeks, just as fresh as when you put them in.